That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The Hereford training grounds stretched under a slate-grey sky, the kind that hung low over the Welsh borders, like a perpetual reminder of the discipline required to serve. At 600 hours, the SAS selection cadre assembled in the main hall, boots echoing on the polished concrete as ranks formed with mechanical precision. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at attention in the third row, her camouflage fatigues crisp. The weight of her rucksack from the morning tab already settled into her shoulders like an old companion. At 32, she had earned her place through 3 grueling tours, Afghanistan, Iraq, and a classified op in the Balkans. But Hereford demanded more. It always did. The hall smelled of damp wool and machine oil, the faint tang of breakfast tea lingering from the mess. Major Harlan Reed, the cadre's commanding officer, paced the front, his voice cutting through the silence like a bayonet. "This is not a game, gentlemen and ladies," he said, his eyes sweeping the line, pausing briefly on Vasquez. "Selection isn't about strength alone. It's about control, about knowing when to push and when to yield. Today, we test your limits in close-quarters combat. Pair up, no holding back." Vasquez nodded to herself, her breath steady. She had joined the SAS 2 years prior, one of the first women to pass the brutal endurance phase after the regiment opened its doors wider. Her file spoke of quiet competence, expert marksman, fluent in 3 languages, handler to a K9 unit back at Credenhill. But here, in the heart of the Special Air Service's home, reputations were forged or shattered in seconds. Her partner for the drill was Lance Corporal Tom Hargrove, a stocky veteran from the reserves with a reputation for aggressive takedowns. He flashed her a nod as they stepped into the sparring circle, marked by white tape on the mat-covered floor. The cadre's instructors circled the edges, clipboards in hand, radios clipped to their webbing humming faintly with standby chatter. "Begin," Reed commanded, and the pairs engaged. Fists thudded against pads, grunts echoed off the walls, and the air thickened with the rhythm of controlled violence. Vasquez moved with economy, her strikes precise, jab to the ribs, feint left, sweep low. Hargrove was heavier, his style brute force wrapped in technique. He closed the distance quickly, grappling for a clinch. She countered, twisting free, but he adapted, driving her back against the mat's edge. The circle blurred as sweat beaded on her brow, the cool draft from the hall's vents contrasting the heat building in her muscles. Around them the routine held. A private from the paras tapped out cleanly. An officer cadet reset his stance without complaint. Order reigned, as it must in a unit where one lapse could mean lives lost in the field. But Hargrove pressed harder than protocol allowed. In a standard drill, chokes were simulated, hands hovering, pressure implied. His arm snaked around her neck, the crook of his elbow locking in for real. Vasquez felt the vice tighten, her airway narrowing as his forearm pressed against her windpipe. The world tunneled, the metallic taste of adrenaline, the distant bark of a drill sergeant's correction to another pair. She tapped his arm once, signaled to release, but he held, his grip unyielding, a murmur escaping his lips too low for the instructors to catch. "Prove it, then," he whispered, the words laced with the undercurrent that had simmered in briefings, doubts about her place, unspoken challenges to her selection. Her vision spotted at the edges, the hall's fluorescent lights flickering like distant stars. Instinct surged, years of training screaming to submit, to yield for the sake of the exercise, to maintain the chain of command's fragile peace. Defiance here could end a career before it peaked. The SAS thrived on unity, not division. But conscience clawed back. This wasn't sparring. It was a test, personal and raw, mocking the loyalty she had sworn to the regiment and to herself. With a surge that surprised even her, Vasquez drove her elbow into his midsection, the impact solid and reverberating through her bones. Hargrove grunted, his hold loosening a fraction. She exploited it, pivoting sharply, her free hand clamping over his wrist while her legs hooked his for leverage. The mat scraped beneath them as she reversed the position, slamming him down, not with rage, but with the cold precision of a soldier who knew the cost of hesitation. His back hit the floor, her knee pinning his chest, the choke now hers, applied just enough to force compliance. The hall fell silent. Instructors froze mid-note, radios crackling to life as Reed's voice cut through. "Stand down! Vasquez, Hargrove, report." Hargrove's face reddened, his eyes wide with shock, but he tapped out twice, the signal clear. Vasquez released immediately, rolling to her feet and offering a hand to pull him up. A gesture of respect amid the tension. He took it, but his jaw tightened, the moment etching itself into the air like frost on glass. Reed approached, his expression unreadable, the weight of command evident in his measured steps. "Explain," he said simply, addressing Vasquez first. She stood at attention, chest rising evenly despite the adrenaline's echo. "Sir, the hold exceeded simulation parameters. I defended as trained." Hargrove shifted beside her, mumbling about the intensity of the drill, but the cadre's eyes lingered on the unspoken fracture. Whispers rippled through the ranks, soldiers exchanging glances, the bond of the unit tested in this single defiant snap. As the session resumed, Vasquez felt the shift. Her action hadn't shattered order, it had pierced it, exposing the moral fault lines beneath the routine. In the SAS, loyalty wasn't just to orders, it was to the truth of who you were, dogged and unyielding. But Hereford would demand reckoning, and she knew this was only the beginning. The wind outside howled against the windows, carrying the promise of storms yet to break. The debrief room adjacent to the main hall was a stark contrast to the sparring area. Bare walls lined with faded maps of operational theatres, a long oak table scarred from years of clenched fists and urgent briefings. Fluorescent bulbs hummed overhead, casting shadows that sharpened the edges of every face. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at ease before Major Reed, her uniform still damp with sweat, the faint metallic tang of exertion clinging to her skin. Lance Corporal Hargrove flanked her, his posture rigid, eyes fixed on a point beyond the Major's shoulder. The air carried the scent of stale coffee from a pot in the corner, untouched since dawn. Reed leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, his beret resting on the table like a silent judge. Two instructors flanked him. Captain Ellis, a wiry veteran with a scar tracing his jaw from a long-ago breach in Helmand, and Staff Sergeant Patel, whose clipboard now lay open, notes scribbled in tight, precise script. The room's single window overlooked the training grounds, where distant shouts from the ongoing session filtered through like muffled radio static. "Walk me through it again," Reed said, his voice level, demanding without elevation. "From the clinch." Vasquez met his gaze steadily, her hands clasped behind her back. "Sir, we engaged as ordered. Lance Corporal Hargrove initiated the grapple. I countered per protocol, evasion and reset. His hold transitioned to a full rear naked choke, exceeding simulation limits. No tap acknowledged on my first signal. I reversed to neutralize the threat." Her words were clipped, factual, stripped of accusation. In the regiment, explanations weren't defenses. They were reports, logged and dissected for lessons. Hargrove shifted, the creak of his boots on the linoleum amplifying in the quiet. "It was heat of the moment, sir, pushing limits to simulate real stress. She's tough, knew she could handle it." His tone carried an edge of camaraderie, but his eyes flicked to Vasquez, a flicker of resentment beneath the deference. Reed's pen tapped once against the table, the sound echoing like a metronome, resetting the room's tension. Ellis interjected, flipping a page. "Witnesses confirmed the hold was applied. No malice noted in the initial exchange, but the duration, 8 seconds past standard, raises flags. Vasquez, your reversal was clean. Textbook. Hargrove, that's not how we build trust in the team." Patel nodded, adding, "A video from the overhead cam will clarify, but this isn't isolated. Chatter in the ranks about integration, women in selection. It colors everything." The words hung, unspoken implications weaving through the air like smoke from a suppressed barrel. Vasquez felt the weight of it, not as personal slight, but as the regiment's broader fracture, the slow grind of change against tradition's unyielding grain. She had earned her wings through the same hills and rivers as the men, 40-mile tabs in pouring rain, nights without sleep in the Brecon beacons, but doubts lingered. whispered in the barracks like ghosts of old campaigns. Loyalty to the unit meant swallowing slights. Morality demanded addressing them before they festered into division. Reed dismissed Hargrove with a curt nod, the lance corporal saluting sharply before exiting, the door clicking shut behind him. Alone with the officers, Vasquez's stance held firm, though her pulse echoed the faint drip of a faucet in the adjoining lavatory. "Sergeant," Reed began, his eyes appraising, "the SAS doesn't tolerate fractures. Your action preserved the drill's integrity, but it draws lines. Hargrove's got pull. His father's a colonel in logistics. This could ripple up the chain." She nodded once, the motion economical. "Understood, sir. My priority is the team. If that means formal report, I'm prepared." Inside, the conflict stirred. Obedience to command versus the quiet imperative to protect the meritocracy that had brought her here. The regiment prided itself on merit, not lineage, yet realities intruded, subtle biases in assignments, the extra scrutiny on her quals. Her K9 partner, Rex, waited back at the kennels, his unerring nose a reminder of bonds forged beyond words. If she yielded now, what message did that send to the handlers under her eventual command? The major stood, signaling the end. "Stand by for review. No sparring until cleared. Focus on your quals. Navigation brief at 1400. As she saluted and turned for the door, Ellis called after her, voice low, "Vasquez, watch your flanks. Not everyone's pulling for you." The warning landed like a suppressed round, precise and unseen until impact. Outside, the midday drizzle had begun, pattering against the gravel paths of the Hereford compound. Vasquez made her way to the kennels, the wind carrying the earthy scent of wet soil and pine from the bordering hills. The SAS base sprawled across acres of controlled chaos, vehicle bays humming with mechanics tuning Land Rovers, a distant crack of rifle fire from the range. Soldiers nodded as she passed, some with respect, others with guarded curiosity, the morning's incident already threading through the grapevine like encrypted comms. Rex was in his run, a sleek German shepherd with fur the color of shadowed bark, his ears perking at her approach. The kennel master, a grizzled warrant officer named Grimes, unlocked the gate. "Heard about the dust-up," Grimes said, handing over the lead. "Rex sensed your tension from across the yard this morning. Animals don't lie." Vasquez knelt, ruffling the dog's neck, feeling the steady warmth of his loyalty, a counterpoint to the human uncertainties. Rex nuzzled her palm, his breath warm and trusting, eyes reflecting the quiet bond that no rank could command. She clipped the lead and led him out for a perimeter walk, the drizzle soaking into her collar, grounding her in the routine. But as they circled the outer fence, a group of trainees from the session lingered near the vehicle pool, their laughter cutting short at her sight. Hargrove was among them, leaning against a Humvee, his expression hardening. One muttered something, the words lost to the rain, but the intent clear. Challenge unmet, resentment brewing. By afternoon, the navigation brief unfolded in the ops tent, canvas walls flapping gently in the breeze. Vasquez sat at the back, map spread before her, plotting routes through the Welsh terrain, rivers to ford, ridges to crest. Reed's voice droned over the projector. Precision saves lives, deviation costs them. Her mind mapped parallels. The sparring mat as a microcosm of the field, where one unchecked aggression could unravel the squad. As the session broke, a junior corporal approached, hesitating. "Ma'am, Sergeant, that move today, it was solid, needed seeing." His salute was crisp, a small affirmation amid the scrutiny. Vasquez returned it, the exchange brief, but it anchored her. The regiment's strength lay in these threads, loyalty tested, not broken. Yet as evening fell, the base lights flickering on against the gathering dusk, a summons arrived via radio. Reed's office, 2,000 hours. The incident's reckoning was accelerating, pulling her deeper into the moral current. Outside, Rex paced his run, whining softly, as if sensing the storm gathering beyond the rain. In Hereford, defiance wasn't just personal. It was institutional, demanding she remember who she was amid the chain's unyielding pull. The clock on the wall ticked past 2,000 hours as Sergeant Elena Vasquez entered Major Reed's office, the door's hinges whispering a soft protest against the frame. The room was a fortress of functionality. Steel filing cabinets lined one wall, their surfaces etched with dust from the day's operations. A desk lamp cast a pooled light over stacks of debrief reports and a half-empty mug of tea, its surface filmed over. Reed sat behind the desk, his uniform jacket unbuttoned at the collar, the faint scent of pipe tobacco clinging to the air from a habit he indulged only in private. Captain Ellis stood by the window, arms crossed, the drizzle outside streaking the glass like tears on a visor. "Sit, Sergeant," Reed said, gesturing to the chair opposite. Vasquez complied, her posture straight, boots planted firmly on the worn carpet. The Major's eyes, sharp as a sniper's scope, held hers without wavering. "The video confirms your account. Hargrove's hold was no accident. Sustained pressure, ignored tap. But this isn't just about one drill. It's about the regiment's fabric." Ellis shifted, his voice measured, words spreading. "Trainees are talking. Some call it gutsy, others mutiny. Hargrove's denied intent, claims it was training zeal. His father's already phoned Brigade HQ, framing it as overreach on your part." The captain's scar caught the light, a reminder of battles where lines blurred between ally and adversary. Vasquez absorbed it, her face impassive, though the knot in her chest tightened like a rigger's hitch. In the SAS, personal ties could sway judgments, turning merit into maneuver. Reed leaned forward, elbows on the desk, the wood creaking under the pressure. "I need your read. Was this targeted? Integration's been smooth on paper, but the undercurrents, they're real." His tone wasn't accusatory. It was operational, probing for intel on a threat within the ranks. Vasquez paused, weighing her words, truth without escalation, loyalty without blindness. "Sir, it's not isolated. Comments in the mess, sidelong looks during quals, Hargrove's vocal about standard slipping. But I reversed to protect the exercise, not settle scores." The Major nodded, jotting a note on a pad, the pen's scratch amplifying in the quiet. Outside, the wind rattled the window, carrying the distant low of a generator from the motor pool. "Fair. We'll convene a formal inquiry tomorrow. Section 8 review witnesses from the hall. You'll testify, Hargrove too. Keep it clean. Facts, no emotion. The regiment values resolve, not vendettas." He paused, his gaze softening a fraction, the weight of command evident in the lines around his eyes. "Vasquez, you've got the makings of a fine operator. Don't let this derail you." She saluted as she rose, the motion crisp, her mind already mapping the terrain ahead. Testimony under scrutiny, the chain's gears grinding against her integrity. As she exited, the corridor's fluorescent strips buzzed overhead, casting long shadows that danced with her steps. The base had quieted for the night, patrol's boots thudding softly on gravel paths, the occasional crackle of a radio from a sentry post, but sleep would evade her. The moral current pulled stronger now, demanding she hold course amid the institutional tide. Dawn broke with a chill mist rolling off the Wye River, blanketing the Hereford parade ground in a veil that muffled the reveille bugle. Vasquez reported to the inquiry room at 700, her uniform pressed, notebook in hand. The space was neutral territory, a conference table ringed by folding chairs, whiteboards erased clean, the air scented with fresh brewed coffee from an urn in the corner. Reed presided, flanked by Ellis and a neutral adjudicator from Brigade, a Colonel Thorne, his silver eagles glinting under the lights, face carved from years of impartial rulings. Hargrove arrived minutes later, escorted by Patel, his expression stoic but eyes downcast. 6 witnesses filed in after, trainees from the sparring session, their fatigue still carrying the faint odor of mat rubber and sweat. They stood at ease until ordered to sit, the room settling into a rhythm of clipped questions and responses. "Private Jenkins," Reed began, addressing the first, a lanky sapper with fresh ink on his wrists from a recent tattoo. "Describe the hold from your vantage." Jenkins cleared his throat, voice steady. "Sir, it looked real, none not simulated. Sergeant Vasquez tapped once, clear as day. Lance Corporal held on, then she countered hard. Clean move, no excess." Murmurs rippled faintly, quelled by Thorne's raised hand. Next was Corporal Hale, a wiry signals operator who'd paused his own drill to watch. "Heard him mutter something, sir. Prove it or close. Tension's been building. Talk about her quals being adjusted for diversity quotas. The words landed like suppressed fire, precise and piercing. Hargrove's jaw clenched, but he remained silent, per protocol. Vasquez testified last, her account mirroring the video, timeline exact, actions justified. Thorne interjected once, his voice gravelly. Sergeant, protocol allows escalation in reversal. Did you consider de-escalating verbally? She met his gaze. Sir, verbal was attempted via tap. In the field, hesitation costs. I neutralized to resume order. As the inquiry wrapped, the room's tension lingered, thick as fog. Reed adjourned with a promise of findings by noon, dismissing the group. Outside, the mist had lifted, revealing the training fields where new cadres formed up, shouts echoing like commands in a live op. Vasquez made for the kennels again, needing Rex's grounding presence. The dog's run was a sanctuary of chain link and straw, his tail thumping against the gate as she approached. Grimes was there, polishing harnesses, his nod approving. Inquiry go all right. Rex has been pacing, knows when you're in the thick of it. She knelt, clipping the lead, Rex's fur damp from the morning dew, his nose pressing into her hand with unerring trust. They walked the perimeter trail, boots sinking into soft earth, the river's murmur a steady counterpoint to her thoughts. Loyalty like this, silent, instinctive, cut through the regiment's hierarchies. But as they rounded a bend, Hargrove appeared on a cross-path leading a patrol of 3. He halted them, eyes locking on hers, the group falling quiet. Vasquez, he said, voice low, professional edge masking the undercurrent. Inquiry's just procedure. No hard feelings, team first. His salute was textbook, but the witnesses from earlier flanked him, their stares assessing. She returned it, Rex growling softly at her side, hackles subtle. Understood, Lance Corporal, focus on the mission. The exchange ended there, but the air crackled with unresolved charge, the moral fracture widening under public eyes. By midday, the findings circulated via secure memo. Hargrove reprimanded, 3-day restriction to barracks. Vasquez cleared, commended for restraint. Whispers turned to open discussion in the mess hall that evening. Soldiers clustered over trays of stew and bread, voices hushed but insistent. She held the line, one said, a medic from the support wing, reminds us merit matters. Others nodded, the incident evolving from private slight to unit lesson, ripples testing the chain's resilience. Vasquez overheard fragments as she queued for tea, the steam rising like battlefield smoke. Her action hadn't sought spotlight, it demanded accountability, forcing the institution to confront its shadows. Yet scrutiny mounted, glances from superiors, a quiet word from Ellis in passing. Brigades watching. Make it count. As night deepened, Rex curled at her bunk's foot in the barracks, his breathing even, a beacon amid the uncertainty. In Hereford, integrity's cost was visibility, and the reckoning was only beginning to unfold. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The afternoon sun slanted through the narrow windows of the SAS briefing annex, casting elongated shadows across the scuffed linoleum floor. Sergeant Elena Vasquez adjusted her beret in the reflection of a tactical mirror, the brass insignia catching the light like a fleeting medal. The reprimand memo had circulated by encrypted email at 1300 hours, its contents terse. Hargrove confined to quarters for 3 days. Mandatory sensitivity training. Vasquez noted for exemplary adherence to protocol under duress. But commendations in the regiment were double-edged. Affirmation laced with expectation, a spotlight that could illuminate flaws as readily as virtues. She reported to the motor pool for the afternoon's vehicle quals, the air thick with the acrid bite of diesel exhaust and the rhythmic clang of tools against undercarriages. Land Rovers idled in neat rows, their engines humming like restrained sentinels, while mechanics in grease-smeared overalls moved with the precision of a well-oiled squad. Corporal Hale, one of the inquiry witnesses, waved her over to a defender fitted for off-road insertion. Sergeant, you're with me on the circuit. Reed's orders, keep it sharp. His tone was neutral. but a subtle nod betrayed the undercurrent of solidarity from the morning's testimony. They mounted up, Vasquez taking the wheel, her gloved hands settling on the controls with familiar ease. The track wound through the Hereford perimeter, gravel paths giving way to rutted mud from recent rains, flanked by barbed wire and observation posts where sentries scanned the horizon. Radio chatter crackled from the dash, coordinated patrols reporting clear sectors, the static underscoring the base's vigilant pulse. As they accelerated into the first incline, hail broke the silence. Mess talks shifting. Some say Hargrove pushed too far. Others think you're setting precedent. Either way, eyes are on you now. Vasquez kept her gaze forward, navigating a sharp turn where the vehicle's tires bit into the earth, spraying faint clods of soil. Precedent's not my goal, Corporal. Just doing the job. But inside, the words resonated, the incident's ripples extending beyond the mat, probing the regiment's commitment to equity amid its storied traditions. Her own path to Hereford had been paved with quiet proofs, leading K9 sweeps in dusty Afghan valleys, where Rex's alerts had saved squads from hidden IEDs. Loyalty there was visceral, unmarred by doubt. Here it navigated human frailties. The qual ended without incident, the defender returning to the pool under a sky bruising toward evening. Vasquez dismounted, wiping a smudge of mud from her sleeve, when a runner from admin approached, boots splashing in shallow puddles. "Sergeant, Colonel Thorne requests your presence at Brigade HQ. Immediate. Transport's waiting." The words landed with the weight of escalation, Thorne's impartiality now pulling her into broader scrutiny. She nodded, grabbing her kit from the locker, the leather strap cool against her palm. The drive to the brigade headquarters took 20 minutes, the blacked-out staff car slicing through the Welsh countryside, hedgerows blurring past like encrypted signals. The building loomed at the edge of the base, a squat, brutalist structure of concrete and steel, its flagpole snapping in the wind. Inside, the corridors smelled of polished oak and printer ink, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, as aides hurried with folders clutched to their chests. Thorne's office was at the end, door ajar, the faint murmur of voices leaking out like suppressed conversation. "Enter," Thorne called as she knocked. The room was austere, a Union Jack draped on one wall, a conference table laden with dossiers, and Thorne himself at the head, his uniform impeccable, silver hair cropped close. Beside him sat a civilian liaison from the Ministry of Defense, Ms. Larkin, mid-40s, in a tailored suit that seemed at odds with the military austerity, her notebook open to a page of neat annotations. No Hargrove. This was Vasquez's solo audience. "Sergeant, sit." Thorne gestured, his voice gravel over gravel. Larkin observed silently, pen poised. "The inquiry's findings are provisional. Brigades reviewing for patterns, integration challenges across SAS and attached units. Your account aligns, but Hargrove's appeal cites misinterpretation of intent. We need depth. Has this dynamic appeared in prior interactions?" Vasquez settled into the chair, her spine straight, the wood's chill seeping through her fatigues. She recounted instances methodically, barbs in the mess about affirmative action wings, sidelong doubts during joint exercises with the paras. No names beyond Hargrove, facts unadorned, her delivery as steady as a patrol report. Larkin's eyes narrowed slightly, jotting notes, the scratch of her pen echoing in the quiet. "And your reversal? Did it stem from personal grievance or operational necessity?" she asked, her tone clinical, probing for fractures in the chain. "Operational, ma'am. In close quarters, unchecked aggression simulates no-win scenarios. I neutralize to restore the drill." Thorne leaned back, fingers drumming once on the table, the rhythm syncing with the distant tick of a wall clock. "Understood. This isn't indictment, it's audit. The regiment's evolving. Women handlers like you with K9 assets are assets we can't afford to sideline. But perceptions matter. Hargrove's family ties complicate. Expect media whispers if it leaks." The session stretched, questions circling like reconnaissance flights, unit morale, training adaptations, the subtle erosions of trust. Vasquez answered without evasion, her conscience a steady compass amid the institutional crosswinds. As it concluded, Thorne stood, offering a firm handshake, rare in protocol, a mark of respect. "Stand fast, Sergeant. Findings by week's end. Return to duties. No restrictions." Outside, the evening had deepened, floodlights illuminating the parade ground where a night drill company marched in formation, their chants cutting through the cooling air. Vasquez hitched a ride back, the driver's radio tuned low to BBC updates on global ops, a reminder of the world's unyielding gaze. At the kennels, Rex waited, his silhouette pacing under the sodium lamps, ears alert to her approaching footsteps. Grimes unlocked the gate without a word, the dog's lead exchanging hands in silent ritual. She walked him along the river path, the wise waters murmuring over stones, mist rising like breath from the current. Rex's paws padded softly beside her, his presence a tether to uncomplicated fidelity. But as they crested a rise, voices carried from the officers' mess. Hargrove's restriction hadn't quelled the undercurrents. A cluster of trainees lingered on the veranda, cigars glowing like fireflies, their discussion halting at her approach. One raised a glass in mock toast, the gesture ambiguous in the half-light. Back in barracks, Vasquez reviewed her logbook by desk lamp, the yellow glow pooling over entries of quals and patrols. A knock sounded, Captain Ellis, beret underarm, face etched with the day's fatigue. Vasquez, quick word. He stepped in, closing the door softly. "Thorne's thorough, good, but Hargrove's not done. Rumors of a counter-report framing your reversal as disproportionate. Watch for it in the review." His warning was brotherly, born of shared campaigns, the scar on his jaw a map of loyalties tested. She nodded, the lamp's hum filling the pause. "Appreciate it, sir. I'll hold the line." Ellis departed, leaving the room to settle into quiet, the base's night sounds filtering through. A helicopter's rotors whirring in the distance, the soft patter of rain resuming on the tin roof. Integrity's path was visibility now, her defiance a catalyst drawing the regiment's gaze. Rex, curled in the corner, lifted his head, eyes reflecting the light, a silent vow amid the gathering scrutiny. In Hereford, the moral reckoning unfolded not in isolation, but in the collective watch of the ranks, demanding she prove her place anew. The first light of dawn filtered through the barracks' narrow slats, painting faint stripes across the concrete floor where Sergeant Elena Vasquez laced her boots with deliberate pulls. The air held the chill of pre-dawn Hereford, laced with the distant hum of generators powering the base's night watch. Sleep had come in fits, her mind replaying the brigade session's probing questions like a looped patrol brief. Rex's soft snores from the corner mat anchored her, his flank rising and falling in rhythm with the quiet. She scratched behind his ears once, the dog's eyes opening briefly, warm and unwavering, before he settled back, a reminder that some loyalties needed no words or ranks. By 05:30, she was in formation for the morning PT run, the cadre assembling under the floodlit parade square, breaths visible in the crisp air. Major Reed's voice carried over the ranks as they stretched, his commands sharp against the gravel crunch underfoot. "Double time, full circuit, no stragglers." Vasquez fell in with the group, her pace steady, muscles warming to the burn as the line snaked past the kennels and along the river path. Whispers from the previous day's rumors clung like morning dew. Hargrove's restriction a topic of low murmurs, her name invoked in tones ranging from admiration to skepticism. Corporal Hale jogged beside her, matching stride. "Overheard in the showers last night. Some brass floating the idea of unit-wide ethics brief. You're doing, Sergeant." She kept her eyes on the horizon, where the wise mist clung to the banks like suppressed fog. "Not seeking credit, Corporal, just clarity." But the words stirred the internal tide. Her reversal had pierced the routine, forcing the regiment to audit its own seams. In the SAS, where ops demanded blind trust, unchecked biases could fracture more than a sparring hold. They could unravel a squad in the field. Rex's image flashed in her mind, his nose to the ground in a sweep, detecting threats humans overlooked. Loyalty here meant exposing the unseen, no matter the cost. The run ended at the obstacle course, ropes dangling from scaffolds like lifelines in a breach. Reed pulled her aside as the group dispersed, his beret casting a shadow over his brow. "Vasquez, brigades accelerated the review. Thorne's convening a full panel at 1000, expanded scope, including K9 integration protocols. Your handler quals are under lens. Hargrove's counter-report questions if your aggression stems from overcompensation. His tone was neutral, operational, but the implication landed. Her path as a female operator with K9 assets now symbolized broader tensions. She nodded, saluting crisply. "Ready, sir. Facts on the table." The panel room in the brigade annex was larger than the inquiry space, its walls paneled in dark wood that absorbed sound, leaving only the faint tick of an analog clock and the rustle of papers. Thorne presided from the head, flanked by Reed, Ellis, and 2 external assessors, a psychologist from the Army Medical Corps and a liaison from the Defense Diversity Unit, both in crisp uniforms that spoke of detached authority. Vasquez entered at precisely 1000, standing at attention until invited to sit, the chair's vinyl creaking under her weight. Hargrove was absent. His input submitted in writing, but his shadow loomed in the dossier before Thorne. "Proceed," Thorne said, his gravel voice initiating the tape recorder with a click. The psychologist, Major Lang, a woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a notebook of behavioral charts, led off. "Sergeant, describe the emotional state during the reversal. Any indicators of unresolved stress from prior deployments." Vasquez met her gaze evenly, the room's air conditioner humming like distant rotor blades. "Controlled, ma'am. Adrenaline standard for CQC. My focus was restoring the drill, protecting the team's training integrity." Lang nodded, scribbling but pressed. "And the K9 bond? Reports note your reliance on Rex during quals. Does it influence interpersonal dynamics?" The question veered personal, threading her operational edge with vulnerability. Vasquez paused, the faint scent of polished leather from the assessor's belts grounding her. "Rex enhances detection, ma'am. Explosives, perimeters. Trust there translates to human teams. Instinct over assumption. The hold ignored protocol. I acted to prevent escalation, as in any op." Ellis shifted slightly, his support silent but present in the tilt of his head. Thorne interjected, flipping to Hargrove's report. "He claims provocation, your reputation for pushing boundaries in mixed drills, denies intent, attributes it to simulation error." Vasquez's pulse steadied, conscience guiding her response like a handler's lead. "Sir, simulation has limits. His hold risked injury. Reversal was defensive. Per manual, if boundaries need redefining, that's for command." The diversity liaison, Captain Reyes, leaned forward, voice measured. "This incident highlights integration gaps. Women in SAS roles, especially handlers, face amplified scrutiny. Your action could model reform or polarize." The words hung, the moral tension coiling tighter, obedience to the chain versus the quiet demand for equity. Her integrity now a fulcrum for the regiment's evolution. Testimony stretched into the afternoon, witnesses rotating in, Grimes from the kennels affirming her handler poise, Hale recounting the hall's hush post-reversal. Each account built the case, not malice alone but a systemic undercurrent, whispers of doubt eroding merit. Vasquez felt the weight, subtle gestures betraying the strain, a tightening of her jaw, the cool press of her wedding ring against her palm, a talisman from a life beyond the wire. Outside, the sun climbed, casting shifting light through blinds that striped the table like range markers. Adjournment came at 14:30, Thorne's gavel-like rap signaling pause. "Deliberations tomorrow. Stand by for outcomes." Vasquez saluted out, the corridor's echo amplifying her footsteps, aides glancing up from desks cluttered with satcoms and ops logs. The drive back blurred in her mind, the staff car's tires humming over rain-slicked roads until she reached the kennels. Rex bounded to the gate, his bark sharp and welcoming, fur flecked with afternoon dew from a solo run. Grimes handed the lead, his eyes knowing. "Panel go deep. He's been off. Senses the pull on you." They walked the inner perimeter, the base's rhythm unfolding, a Chinook's rotors thumping overhead on approach, mechanics' calls from the hangar sharp against the wind. Rex's nose worked the air, pausing at a fence post, his body language a mirror to her vigilance, alert, unyielding. "It's testing everything," she murmured, more to him than Grimes trailing at a distance. The dog's head turned, eyes locking on hers, the bond a steady current amid the institutional churn. Hargrove's report lingered like a shadow op, but witnesses' truths were gaining ground, her defiance sparking quiet shifts in the ranks. Evening brought the mess hall, steam rising from tureens of lamb stew and potatoes, the clatter of trays a counterpoint to subdued conversations. Soldiers nodded as she queued, a private from the signals troop offering a seat unprompted. Heard the panels digging. Solid stand, Sergeant. Makes us all sharper. The affirmation was small, but it rippled, human emotion emerging in the shared glance, the held salute a beat longer. Yet across the room, Hargrove's restricted absence was felt. His mates clustered tighter, murmurs ceasing at her approach. Back in quarters, Vasquez reviewed briefing notes by desk light, the lamp's glow warm against the cooling night. A radio update crackled from the communal set, global tensions rising, a reminder of the stakes beyond Hereford's gates. Ellis stopped by again, this time with a sealed envelope. Preliminary feedback from Thorne. Positive lean, your handler angles resonating, they're eyeing protocol tweaks for mixed CQC, but Hargrove's pushing back. Families leaning on connections. He paused at the door, the frame's shadow framing his resolve. You're reshaping this, Vasquez, quietly. She nodded, sealing the envelope away. Rex at her feet with a contented sigh. The moral current surged now, public reckoning drawing allies and adversaries alike, her conscience the unbreaking line. In the SAS, legacy formed not in glory, but in the disciplined stand against fracture, proving who she was for the team, the dog, the regiment. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying the promise of reform on its breath, as the base settled into watchful dark. The morning mist clung to the Hereford parade ground like a reluctant shroud, the first rays of sun piercing through to glint off the dew-slicked boots of the assembled cadre. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood in the front rank for the 0600 formation, her breath steady in the crisp air, the faint scent of damp earth rising from the gravel. Rex's absence from her side felt like a missing limb. Kennel protocols barred K9s from morning drills, but his imprint lingered in the disciplined rhythm of her steps. Major Reed's voice boomed over the ranks, outlining the day's ops, live-fire quals at the range, followed by a unit-wide ethics seminar mandated by brigade. This isn't punishment, he said, eyes sweeping the line, lingering on Vasquez. It's refinement. We adapt or we falter. The formation broke with salutes snapping like suppressed rounds, soldiers dispersing to armories and briefing tents, the base awakening with the low growl of engines firing up. Vasquez joined the queue for the range, her SA-80 slung over her shoulder, the weapon's weight a familiar anchor. Corporal Hale fell in beside her, kit bag thumping against his thigh. Seminar's direct fallout from the panel. Thorne's pushing for it, your reversal's the spark. His words were matter of fact, no awe or judgment, just the operational truth of cause and effect. She nodded, sighting down the rifle's barrel as they walked, the metal cool under her gloved fingers. Refinement's overdue. Trust starts on the mat, ends in the field. At the range, the air sharpened with the tang of cordite, berms rising like silent guardians against the Welsh hills. Instructors barked positions, prone, kneeling, standing, targets popping up at randomized intervals, the crack of fire echoing off the earthworks. Vasquez settled into her slot, cheek welding to the stock, her shots grouping tight at 300 meters, each pull of the trigger a measured release of the night's tensions. Hargrove was absent, his restriction holding, but his squad mates fired nearby, their glances sidelong, assessing. One, Private Jenkins from the inquiry, paused between strings to murmur, "Clean group, Sergeant, like your counter, precise." The exchange was brief, a thread of respect weaving through the procedural haze. The qual wrapped by 0900, scores logged on clipboards with the efficiency of a post-op tally. Vasquez cleared her weapon at the safety station, the bolt slide a satisfying clack, before heading to the seminar tent. Canvas walls billowed gently in the breeze, folding chairs arranged in rows facing a projector screen, flickering with the MOD's diversity module. Captain Reyes from the panel facilitated, her uniform crisp, voice projecting over the hum of the generator. Integration isn't quota, it's capability. Biases erode cohesion, address them head-on. Slides rolled, case studies from joint ops, anonymized reports of fractures in mixed units. Vasquez sat midway back, notebook open, her pen tracing key phrases: moral courage, chain accountability, echoing the internal debate that had defined her stand. Midway through, Reyes called for input, the room's silence breaking with hesitant raises of hands. A signals corporal spoke first. "Sir, ma'am, doubts linger on Qualls. How do we prove without proving?" Murmurs rippled, heads nodding, the seminar shifting from lecture to reckoning. Vasquez raised her hand, voice level when called. "Proof's in action, not assumption. The sparring hold tested more than technique, it tested trust. Neutralize threats early, or they compound." Reyes nodded, advancing a slide on de-escalation protocols, the discussion gaining momentum, soldiers leaning forward, the air thickening with shared vulnerability. No accusations flew. Instead, quiet admissions surfaced, a lance corporal admitting sidelong comments he'd ignored, another crediting her reversal for prompting self-checks. As the session adjourned, Reed pulled Reyes aside near the tent flap, their conversation low but visible, gestures emphatic, nods resolute. Vasquez overheard fragments, protocol revisions for CQC, mandatory mixed-pair rotations, her action catalyzing tangible reform. Outside, the sun climbed higher, warming the gravel paths as she made for the kennels, the base's pulse steady. A distant rotor wash from an incoming Merlin, the sharp calls of a PT instructor driving recruits through burpees. Grimes met her at the gate, Rex already leashed, his tail sweeping arcs in the dirt. Seminar hit home. He's been ears up all morning, knows the shift. They walked the outer trail, Rex ranging ahead on a loose lead, his nose questing through bracken and fern, the river's murmur a constant undertone. Vasquez's boots crunched over fallen leaves, the earth's give mirroring the regiment's subtle yielding. "It's moving, Grimes, not revolution, evolution." The kennel master grunted approval, his pipe unlit in his pocket. "Dogs teach that. Loyalty adapts, doesn't break." Rex paused at a scent, body tensing, then relaxing. A false alert, but the lesson clear. Vigilance without overreach. By afternoon, the ethics seminar's echoes reached the motor pool, where mechanics paused wrench turns to discuss over tool benches, the clang of metal resuming with renewed focus. Vasquez joined a vehicle maintenance rotation, her hands blackening with grease as she torqued a suspension bolt on a wolfhound, the wrench's resistance giving way under steady pressure. Hale worked adjacent, wiping sweat from his brow. "Heard Hargrove's appeal got shot down. Thorne's finalizing reprimand escalation. Your testimony sealed it." She tightened the fitting, the ratchet's click punctuating his words. "Sealed the team, Corporal, that's the win." As evening drew in, the base lights flickered on, casting pools of amber over the parade ground where an informal formation gathered, not ordered, but organic. Reed at the front with a handheld mic. "Stand easy," he began, voice carrying over the cooling air. "Today's seminar isn't abstract." Sergeant Vasquez's stand reminded us, "Integrity's our core. Hargrove reports for retraining tomorrow, unit protocols update next week." Questions? Hands rose sparingly, responses clipped, affirmations of readiness, a quiet resolve settling like dusk. Vasquez stood at the edge, Rex at heel for the off-duty allowance, his presence drawing nods from handlers in the crowd. No spotlight fell on her. The reform was collective, her defiance the quiet catalyst. The formation dispersed into the mess, the scent of roasting beef and Yorkshire puddings wafting from open doors, laughter threading through the clatter of cutlery. Vasquez, cued with Rex permitted at her side, the dog's calm demeanor easing tensions, a private offering a scrap of biscuit, earning a soft woof. At her table, Ellis joined, tray balanced. "Thorne's memo incoming. Full clearance for you, commendation for initiative." Hargrove sidelined from selection cadre, career ripple. His eyes held steady, the scar on his jaw catching the light. "You held the line, Sergeant. Regiment stronger." She nodded, fork pausing over her plate, the weight of consequence settling, not burden, but legacy. The moral tension that had gripped her from the choke's vice now loosened, actions rippling through ranks like a well-executed patrol, exposing fractures, forging resilience. Rex leaned against her leg, warm and solid, his loyalty the unspoken truth amid the human reforms. Outside, the Welsh night deepened, stars pricking the sky over Hereford, the base's hum a testament to disciplined evolution. In the SAS, redemption came not in fanfare, but in the steady march forward, conscience guiding the chain. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The weeks following the ethics seminar unfolded with the measured cadence of Hereford's routines, the base's rhythm unbroken yet subtly altered, like a patrol route refined after a close call. Sergeant Elena Vasquez rose each dawn at 500, the faint glow of her alarm syncing with the first stirrings of the barracks, soft snores tapering into the shuffle of boots on linoleum, the distant clank of kettles in the cookhouse. Rex's lead was clipped by 0530, their morning perimeter walk a ritual of quiet vigilance, his paws padding over dew-kissed gravel, nose questing through the bracken where the wise mist lingered like unresolved orders. The dog's steady gait mirrored her own resolve, a bond that had weathered deployments and now anchored her through the regiment's introspection. By mid-morning, Vasquez reported to the training wing for her reassigned duties, lead instructor for mixed CQC rotations, a role carved from the panel's recommendations. The sparring hall, once a stage for fracture, now hummed with purposeful energy. White tape circles refreshed on the mats, instructors' clipboards updated with new protocols, emphasizing de-escalation signals and mutual respect. Trainees filed in at 1,000 hours, a diverse cadre, men from the paras, women from signals, all in crisp fatigues that carried the faint starch of recent presses. Major Reed observed from the sidelines, arms crossed, his presence a silent endorsement of the shifts her stand had provoked. "Pair off," Vasquez commanded, her voice carrying the clipped authority honed in Afghan dust storms. "Simulate only. Taps honored immediately. This builds trust, not tests limits." The pairs engaged with controlled precision, jabs glancing off pads, grapples releasing on cue, the air filling with the thud of impacts and the sharp exhales of effort. Corporal Hale partnered with a new recruit, demonstrating a reversal much like hers, clean without excess, while Private Jenkins, eyes focused, mirrored the technique across the mat. No whispers disrupted the flow. Instead, questions arose organically during resets. "Sergeant, how do you read intent mid-hold?" She answered factually, drawing from the inquiry's lessons, her gestures economical, a hand extended in correction, a nod affirming progress. Hargrove's restriction had lifted after retraining, but his return was subdued. Assigned to logistics rotations, away from selection cadre, the reprimands ripple curtailing his influence without fanfare. He nodded to Vasquez during a brief overlap in the vehicle pool, the exchange professional, salute exchanged, no lingering gaze, his posture reflecting the seminar's imprint. In the mess that evening, over trays of shepherd's pie steaming under the low lights, soldiers discussed the updates in low tones. New protocols cut the bullshit. Focus on the team. A medic from support leaned in, voice respectful. "Your call started it, Sergeant. Makes the whole unit tighter." Vasquez ate methodically, fork scraping against the plate, the savory warmth grounding her amid the affirmations. Recognition came not in medals, but in these subtle transformations, the chain of command adapting, biases addressed through procedure rather than confrontation. Her own file noted the commendation, demonstrated moral courage in upholding training standards, a line that would echo in future assignments, perhaps leading K9 integrations in joint ops. Rex, curled under the table with permission for handlers, sensed the shift, his head resting on her boot, a quiet emblem of unwavering loyalty. The brigade's final review arrived via secure dispatch 2 days later, Thorne's signature affirming closure, Hargrove's appeal denied, protocols revised across SAS units, mandatory ethics modules quarterly, mixed pair mandates in all CQC quals, with emphasis on handler dynamics extending to K9 teams. Larkin from the MOD followed up in a virtual brief, her screen crisp against the ops tent's canvas walls. "Sergeant, your testimony informed the framework. Integration's not event-driven, it's systemic. Expect mentorship roles. Guide the next wave." Vasquez acknowledged from her station, the projector fan whirring softly, her reflection in the monitor steady. Understood, ma'am. Service to the regiment. Afternoons brought mentorship shifts. Vasquez paired with junior handlers in the kennels, where the air smelled of straw and oiled leather, dogs' barks punctuating the lessons. Grimes assisted, demonstrating harness fittings as Rex demonstrated perimeter sweeps, his alerts precise on planted decoys. A young lance corporal, fresh from basic, knelt beside her, gloved hand tentative on his shepherd's flank. "How do you read them under fire, Sergeant? Like the hold instinct over orders?" She guided his grip, the dog's fur warm under their palms. Instinct serves orders when trust holds. The reversal taught that, for humans too. Lead with conscience, the chain follows. As autumn deepened, the Welsh winds carrying the crisp bite of falling leaves, Hereford's parade ground hosted a low-key ceremony. No fanfare, just ranks formed under a slate sky. Reed at the podium with a commendation scroll. Vasquez stood front and center, beret squared, Rex at heel in full harness, the dog's presence a nod to her dual role. "For actions that reinforced our core values," Reed read, voice steady over the wind, "Sergeant Vasquez exemplifies the SAS ethic, duty tempered by integrity." The scroll passed hands. Her salute held a beat longer, eyes meeting his in shared understanding. Witnesses from the hall, Hale, Jenkins, even a subdued Hargrove in the rear, nodded, the moment etching legacy into the unit's fabric. Post-ceremony, the cadre dispersed to the range for voluntary quills, the crack of rounds a rhythmic affirmation of readiness. Vasquez walked Rex along the river path afterward, the water's flow murmuring over smoothed stones, mist rising like exhaled breaths from the current. The incident's moral tension had resolved not in victory, but in evolution, the regiment learning from one defiant snap, her conscience sparking quiet reforms that strengthened the whole. She became a symbol, not of division, but of moral strength. A handler whose bond with man and dog reminded all that loyalty demanded truth, even in the grip of hierarchy. In the quiet of that walk, with Rex's lead loose in her hand, Vasquez felt the transformation settle, a legacy of disciplined courage, where the system's rigid lines bent toward justice, honoring the unyielding self beneath the uniform. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of Don't Forget Who I Am. They choked her during sparring. Then the SAS operator snapped the fight in half in Hereford. See you in the next one. In the end, it was the silent bond between soldier and sentinel that proved the true chain of command, unbreakable, guiding the regiment toward a horizon of earned trust.